Welcome to the Game Souk, Game Souk number 49. Every morning, this team of thought leaders and pioneers at the intersection of gaming, emerging technologies, and investing discusses and debates the news of the week. We also discuss new opportunities that are bubbling up for independent UGC creators on Roblox and Fortnite. That's really our area of focus. At 88, we believe that creators and developers are moving to the front of the line, and we want to empower them. Then on Thursday mornings, we come together and we bring the biggest and most important ideas to the Game Souk so that you can share in these insights. Sometimes we also have leaders in the UGC space as guests. So if you're interested in joining us on the show, definitely let us know. I'm your host, Angela Dalton, CEO and founder of Signum Growth and 88 Pop. Let's get started. We have a lot today. I was in the city all day yesterday, so we had to push the show to today, but it is a very eventful week. Since last weekend, we have been flooded with messages in the media around not wanting a data center in my backyard. We've been calling this the NIMBY, not in my backyard. It's happening all over the US, especially in states like Wisconsin. It's also happening around the world. Keshav brought up the fact that it's also happening in several states in India. People are pushing back. They do not want data centers anywhere near where they live. This led us to an interesting discussion with Mike around data centers in space and what this has to do with SpaceX and OpenAI. Obviously, there's a lot of news on those companies this week. And then Keshav will cover some big news from Epic Games. Fortnite has relaunched in the Apple App Store. We're going to go to James today on Roblox's AgeGate update. And then we also have a related interesting story around Mixtape and the Annapurna perfect 10 score. So anyway, let's go ahead and kick off today with this idea of the not in my backyard. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And okay, so we looked at this study that said over 70% of Americans oppose AI data center construction in their area. This is a Gallup survey. Only 7% said they were strongly in favor of new data centers. And this is also, by the way, this opposition is higher than it was for nuclear power plants. It was, it's been kind of a mantra in the press, and we were trying to figure out kind of like, what's happening here. People are, kind of citing different things, water, electricity. So let's just go to this discussion. Eliza, do you want to kick it off here?
Yes. I mean, obviously, yes, there are environmental factors. But I think we looked at a sort of tangential aspect to what was going on in the news with Annapurna and Mixtape. What's very interesting there is, and I know it sounds a little bit like off, like beat to go and try to connect these two, but the fact is that Mixtape had a perfect score review by all critics, and then the audience, however, just found so many issues with this game. First of all, it isn't really a game. It's much more like an interactive film. And the things that people has like, should I say, like what the audience critique is going towards is that it feels fabricated. Perhaps these perfect 10 scores are manipulated because Annapurna has a billionaire's daughter as one of the, lead figureheads of the company. So this is, this feeling that how trustable is it?
I'm just going to interrupt for a second because I think it's important. Not just any billionaire, Megan Ellison, who's Larry Ellison's daughter, gets less attention than David, but this lightning rod of the billionaires you could pick out there, Ellison is absolutely a lightning rod in both media and politics, obviously related. And so it does kind of supercharge emotionally, even if it's subconscious, that topic, which I think is where you're going, Liz. But I just want to make it clear for everyone that this is not just any billionaire.
No, absolutely. And it is it's not a far-fetched, nor is it a conspiracy theory-ish thing to start jumping to these conclusions, because we are seeing, as we've said, like business workings that are doing the things with impunity, not with like respect here. So, the audience is very aware of these dynamics. And so this indie darling doesn't feel indie in the very least. That's their general, thing that, everything feels manipulated. Now, nobody
10.
wants, the perfect 10. Yeah, exactly. Perfect 10s seem fairly rare. That on top of that, it has licensed huge musicians from the 90s records that are so familiar to that generation. So, it just doesn't feel like it could be something from the audience point of view that could be essentially a grassroots or an indie type of a project. Now, when it comes to the not in my backyard aspect of these data centers, it's also, we don't necessarily want our billionaires in our lives quite as much as this, perhaps at all. And I think this is something that we've touched upon, I think, in the last couple of Game Souks as well, this general eat the rich kind of vibe that is coming across all of culture, which means that, because of that impunity, people are naturally fearful again. I don't necessarily think it's, a conspiracy thinking that we have in assuming that these things necessarily hold together, but it could also be in the case with this mixtape. So it makes it muddy.
Yeah, we had a really interesting discussion, and we were surprised that we tied these two stories together because it feels like this kind of like indie example with a perfect 10 that happens to have a billionaire's, not any billionaire, Larry Ellison's daughter, as attached to it is interesting. And then there's just like this, when you look at the reasons people don't want the data centers in the backyard, there's like real issues here with water and electricity.
I think the common thread, maybe we can separate for a second. I think the common thread and why we linked them a little bit, I think it was me that linked them. So I'll explain at least my thinking in that, is that there is a sort of anxiety driven anger behind both of them. Subtle, subconscious, both of these topics, right? And what do I mean by that? It's sort of, on the one hand, people don't want to be manipulated. On one hand, meaning Annapurna, they don't want to be manipulated. They want to, they're sort of purists and whatever. Fine. I think we understand that. That's a fairly simple thing to understand. With the data center topic, which is let's be honest, a much bigger topic than an individual game release, I think there is a general sense for a lot of people that they are not benefiting from AI in the way that they see a lot of people, including on just the wealth factor, let alone the gains accruing to companies that are laying off their workers, and the, even within, and this would be a different tie, not that Annapurna has anything to do with AI, but, different gaming companies who there's this knee-jerk reaction when they do anything that is AI sponsored or anything like that. I think there's a feeling that, number one, we're not benefiting from it. In fact, it's hurting us, AI generally. Okay. And then if it's not benefiting us, then why are we going to bear the costs by having a data center in our backyard, to use the BY and NIMBY, right? But I think that is an emotional reaction that is completely justifiable. And I don't think we should go down this rabbit hole right now, but it's part of where you're seeing this resurgence in discussions about universal basic income, or in the new formulation in California, Gavin Newsom has just backed universal basic capital as an idea for almost like a AI kind of sovereign wealth fundish concept where people have shares and whatever. I think all of these things are answers to that anxiety. By the way, I don't think any of this is going to work in our political environment, but nonetheless, it responds to that very specifically in terms of data centers and the environmental concerns that we've spoken about, which and nuclear power is absolutely the right metaphor. So I'll come back to that. But the two biggest topics are electricity costs and water, right? Mm-hmm. Both of those are, I'm just being blunt, and I'm going to take a little bit of a contrarian view here. And the contrarian view will be that the anxiety is understandable, but emotionally, but it's not justified practically. Okay. And the reason for that is that on the electricity side, many of including in Texas, even where there's a lot of, as a state, they're obviously embracing data centers, but there are municipalities where there are issues, there are protests, whatever. The increasingly agreed upon solution here is to subsidize consumer electricity bills, or to have behind the meter power, or sort of dedicated, which the term in general is sort of bring your own power, meaning that if you're going to build a data center, you have to provide the power. You don't get to draw from the grid. Like, there are increasingly very real solutions to this. As you guys can all tell, none of that shit fits on a bumper sticker. So it's not exactly a solve or salve for this anxiety. Okay. But there are absolutely real solutions. On the water side, just honestly, it's just a nonsense, in the sense that increasingly very sophisticated liquid cooling systems and other technologies are kind of minimizing these impacts. But it's easy to hand wave about it because the anxiety is real and it touches a lot of different things. So I think nuclear power is the right metaphor, in the sense that, after 3 Mile Island, even after Fukushima, it was Fukushima that caused the Germans to rip up their nuclear power plans. And that looked like one of the dumbest policy decisions ever in the energy space after Ukraine happened, right? Because then they went back to coal, right? They didn't have a choice. And in the same sense, like, what are we doing now? Microsoft has recommissioned 3 Mile Island, right? Whatever, 50 years later, but all the same, or 48, whatever it is, right? In general, and I'll put myself in this camp, I guess it's subjective, but like, for clean, reliable energy that is relatively cheap, nuclear power is an unbelievably great solution. And the market is now embracing it again. But we go through these periods of like, and I think data centers are the right thing. Is we're in a moment of right? Which is not to say that we've just had a giant, nuclear disaster, or a Chernobyl, or a 3 Mile Island, or a Fukushima. But in terms of the sort of anxieties that come from that, I think we're feeling that, as far as reading about layoffs, the economic concerns, and coming back to where we started with the Annapurna metaphor, this sort of K-shaped impact where we're past a capital K. This is like when you take the font on your whatever from like 10 to 300, that's the size of the K right now, between, those who are benefiting from effectively owning the capital behind AI and data centers and everything else, versus those who have to pay the cost. And that's really what this is a response to. So I agree with all of the populist mentality, but we have to separate out the emotionally political and populist from, I think, the real pragmatism. And then final point I'll make on this is that I actually think, from what I understand, the AI lobby, as it were, so you're talking about literally the lobbyists in both state capitals and Washington, from Google, Amazon, Microsoft, OpenAI, Anthropic, everybody, right? They're well prepared for this. They understand the backlash, and they are ready to meet it with real solutions. This is going to be a battle, as it were, a rhetorical battle, a messaging battle for like the next decade, easily.
How do data centers in space come into this discussion?
I'm gonna stay on my soapbox here for a second. Sorry, everyone, you're gonna tire of the sound of my voice here. But I mean, look, there's a certain space is nobody's backyard to begin with.
Yeah,
okay?
We like that.
And that's that, but let's stick with the practical for a second. Okay. Energy is extraordinarily abundant. The sun always shines in space, and it's very cold. You do not need water for cooling. Okay. Or other cooling solutions. So from an environmental, and I mean in both meanings of environmental, both the impact and the way we think about it politically, and also literally, what is the environment that accommodates very energy intensive compute production? Space is ideal. Okay. So that makes sense. And even, for what it's worth, even earlier this week, Jeff Bezos, who's sort of obviously acts to be competing in many respects with Musk, has gone so far as to say he's not sure we're going to have any data centers in space by 27 or 28, but probably by 2030. Which sounds like, when I hear it's 2030, I'm like, oh, that's a long way away. It's not. It's 3.5 years from now. We may very well have data centers in space. So that's very real. I think more importantly to this discussion, on the political side, the danger of having all of this backlash and everything else is it makes it hard to plan and allocate capital to data centers because you're worried, or you might be worried about state government changing, municipal government changing, things being, not necessarily depermitted, but the effectively the as it were fiscal conditions and regulatory conditions changing. Whereas space is very dependable. There's no state government in space, right? So from both those respects, Musk can be pretty psyched about this, and obviously it's a real feature of the SpaceX IPO, which we just got the prospectus on Wednesday, and plenty of discussions about that. And then it goes further into colonizing Mars and how, Musk gets compensated for that and all that sort of stuff. But we'll save that for another discussion.
Okay, amazing. Let's switch gears to Epic Games. Keshav, huge news this week around Epic Games and relaunching Fortnite in the Apple App Store.
Yep. So I think all of this kicked off with an ex-user asking Tim Sweeney what's happening with these lawsuits and how are things with Google. And he came out saying, be cool with Google. Fortnite is back on Google Play. Epic Games Store is currently available worldwide on Android devices. And they have definitely settled Epic versus Google with a piece 3D. He also mentioned that over the next 18 months, they'll be rolling out a lot of better deals on direct payments on Android worldwide. So that's where they started. And then there were questions on what's happening with Apple. And that's when Tim Sweeney referred to how the court was caught up. And now is the time the final judgment on Apple moves on. And hopefully with the next 4 months, they will have an outcome. Just to put the whole legal battle with Apple in perspective. So obviously started in 2020 when Fortnite was kicked out of the App Store. 2021 is when they did win it in the district courts, and Apple was asked to no longer block developers from directing users to alternative payment options outside of Apple's own ecosystem. And then Apple did comply. They changed their rules to allow external links. But in the end, they ended up imposing new restrictions and fees on them. They ended up charging 27% compared to a normal 30% that they would have charged on a transaction that flows through their ecosystem. In response to that, Epic challenged this compliance, and the district court found Apple in contempt. And they concluded that the company had not complied with the original injunction. So Apple appealed, and they went to the Ninth Circuit, which gave them a partial win. So basically, the Ninth Circuit reversed the district court's outright ban on any commission that Apple could charge on link outs, but it still upheld the underlying contempt finding against Apple. It sent the case back to the district court to determine what commission Apple can charge. So after all this, Apple then asked the Supreme Court to pause this injunction while it prepared for a broader appeal. But because they took too long, the Supreme Court earlier this month rejected that stay request as well, meaning that the case would continue forward in the district court. And a few days ago, I think sometime last week, Apple and Epic both made a joint filing, which outlines the schedule for these proceedings. So Apple, since that date of this filing, Apple has 45 days to present in court, in the district court, what they imagine these fees to be with proper backing, and they have to reveal the costs. They have to reveal what all goes behind it, to Apple coming up to a percentage number of how much they want to charge. And then Epic has another 15 to 30 days to come back if they're fine with it, or if they still believe that this isn't right. But I feel like this could come to an end hopefully in the next 3 or 4 months. But another thing happened on the 21st, I think that's yesterday, where Apple did end up filing their broader request with the Supreme Court, the one that also included putting a stay on the injunction that the district court had ordered. But the broader request that Apple has put forth to the Supreme Court is they're asking the Supreme Court to review 2 questions. The first one is whether Apple should have been held in contempt for charging a commission, because the district court's final judgment didn't specifically say that Apple shouldn't charge a commission, but it was understood to be the intention behind that ruling. And the second point that Apple definitely wants to discuss in the Supreme Court is this is quite new, is they're arguing that the injunction extends far beyond Epic itself. So they've got some precedents. I think one of the precedents includes Trump's own case very recently, where they said that this shouldn't apply to everyone. So that's the same logic that Apple's applying here, that this injunction should only apply to Epic, because in the end, Epic is the one who fought this case. It shouldn't apply to all rest developers worldwide with the apps on the US App Store. So this is also, yeah.
I was just going to say, I think that it's really important to frame the size here. I mean, for every $1 billion that flows through Epic, there's 300 million that could drop to Epic's bottom line and leave the Apple ecosystem. And then if you take just Epic, that's just Epic. Then if you take the rest of the, the platforms, I mean, we heard Strauss Zelnick from Take-Two say, wow, this is the best mobile gaming quarter we've ever had. Basically, thanks to the idea that he doesn't have to pay the tax.
Yeah. And just to put that 300 million number in perspective as well for Apple, in 2019 is when Fortnite as a game had the biggest year. And at the time, I think Epic was the biggest contributor to that revenue. So the App Store, I think, crossed around, they had a big year that year, but the biggest contributor to that was Fortnite alone, because Fortnite that year, I think they earned somewhere around 350 million just from Fortnite, which is, I guess, almost pure bottom line profit for Apple. But yeah, definitely now they're trying to make it just about Epic. And let's see how this pans out. People are saying this could be like one last Hail Mary attempt to delay a conclusion to this case and avoid opening up the gates to payment competition for the benefit of consumers. But at least I think the promising part of this is that the Supreme Court didn't order a stay on the injunction and still going through the district court, and now they have to finalize a commission number that Apple will be able to charge. These two questions that Apple has with the Supreme Court are something now on the side, which let's see if the Supreme Court does accept to take this. They still have the option to just outright reject it, because up until now, since 2024, the Supreme Court has rejected appeals from both Epic and Apple on this case. So let's see if it does end up going through. But we should have a better perspective on what Apple can charge in the next 3 months.
Mm-hmm. Miles, what do you think about this?
I mean, I think of this, the way I've been thinking about this is less from regulatory side and kind of the drama there, and more so what does it mean for the platform. I think have just kind of delayed what I'm kind of thinking of as like the chicken and the egg problem, which is Fortnite desperately needs its mobile audience back, right? The problem is it's gotten to a point where the principal audience playing on Fortnite, or building in UEFN, or building things for players building or playing on console or PC. And a developer doesn't have incentive to make a mobile-friendly game, right, which is a very different kind of game than a shooter. Traditionally, it leans more into the tycoon, more into the kind of simulator genre. There's not a ton of incentive to build those and build those well, because there isn't a huge mobile audience. And it's kind of like, which is going to come first? Are we going to first build a game that mobile audiences flock to Fortnite to play, or are we going to get mobile audiences come to Fortnite and now there's an appetite for that game to be built? The answer to both is just there needs to be a long period of time where Fortnite is back in mobile players' hands. And these hiccups have just delayed that, and it continues to delay that. Again, going back to the very first conversation we had around this is what has allowed Roblox to just absolutely dominate that market. And it's more importantly what has allowed the Roblox developer ecosystem to become incredible when it comes to making really great, kind of quick, dopamine-hitty games. They've had experience building for a mobile audience who's fleeting. And those are kind of lessons that you learn only if you can cut your teeth on that audience. And Fortnite devs just haven't had that opportunity. They're building for a very different profile of player. So I'm just wanting this to kind of stick.
I did want to sum up just one thing. Sorry, okay, I didn't want to take away. I didn't want to take away from the bigger positive update from the week. I know I did definitely cover the whole lawsuit and how they're going. But the bigger update was that Fortnite now is on Apple devices or iOS devices globally. And just to mention why that is the more positive update is because Fortnite definitely did come back on iOS devices in North America or in the US end of last year, and now you can find it globally. So I feel like this year could be the year that they finally get their foothold in those mobile markets. But that was the bigger positive update, apart from maybe Apple not being able to charge a lot of commission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
let's switch to Roblox because we have a lot. It was a big week this week. So Roblox, sorry, Xandros, chime in on Roblox. Roblox Kids, Roblox Select, age gating. James, get us up to speed here. This is a big week for Roblox too.
Yeah, so we spoke a couple of weeks ago about some of the changes that Roblox had coming up in terms of publishing games, but also attempting to make the platform safer, but also trying to fall in line with traditional gaming sort of standards in terms of game ratings, which are coming out later this year. And so publishing games changed quite drastically this week, which we knew about. And so now when you are launching a new game, and you want to make it public, you can only launch to 16 plus users and trusted friends, which is probably like 5 people on your friends list. And before you can be shown to, as people are starting to call them now, the Roblox Kids, you have to have 500 engaged players playing the game. Now, so not 500 concurrent, they just have to be 500 engaged over a period of 60 days. Something that the developer community are, I guess, confused about or upset about is they haven't really explained what an engaged player is. So you just have to hope you get 500 engaged players, not really knowing what that is. On the dashboard, they have given you like this little fill-up bar. And so, for example, we launched a game on, what day were we on Friday? On Wednesday, we launched one. And we've been at around about 300 CCU since then, but we have only got 20 engaged players. So I don't really know what that means.
So you're like 300 CCU and the little fill bar only says 20?
Yeah, it says 20 engaged players. Yeah, so it's very new. Like I said, it only came out on Wednesday, and so we wanted to wait to launch a game just to test it really and see how it's going. And so, yeah, it changes that quite a lot. And so what we've also seen is some games that maybe previously could be played by all ages or, younger ages, maybe like 9+ have changed quite a lot. So Murder Mystery, for example, is now, I believe it's, I want to say it's 13+. It might be 10+. I would need to double check. And so if you haven't verified your age or like your ID, you're just unable to play. You are classed as an under 9, basically. The under 9s before anyone jumps to the conclusion of, well, that means that all the bad actors can just be under 9. If you're under 9, you can't use any of the chat features. You can't DM. You can't communicate in any sort of way. So sure, you have access to younger games only, but you can't talk to anyone.
And it feels like we're starting to gear up for summer on Roblox. Can you just talk us through kind of what you're seeing on volumes and engagement generally?
Yeah, so Roblox has seen a downtrend over the last 6 to 8 weeks of players playing it, and despite me trying to say a lot to everyone I ever speak to is seasonal, Roblox is dying. That's essentially what we live on Twitter. But last weekend was the first weekend that we've seen actually an uptick in players. So more players than playing the previous weekend. I think it was around about 9% increase, which saw stock go up a little bit as well. And I would imagine with it being Labour weekend this weekend and also bank holiday in the UK that kids are off for a long weekend, I would imagine that the numbers go up. And so we're starting to see, this is around about the time that like the seasonal uptrend ticks. And so what we're really going to see now, hopefully touch wood, is the summer numbers start. What we won't see well, we don't know if we'll see it, but like what we won't see is the huge spike that we had last year that was driven by off-platform growth with Grow a Garden and Steal a Brain Rot. Now, I say we won't see that because it's impossible to predict like a game like that coming out and just going crazy. It might happen, but the chances are it probably won't happen. But I still expect them to have like a pretty strong summer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It is encouraging, really, to see the numbers pick up. I think my own 14-year-old is wrapping up finals and playing a little bit more Adopt Me every day.
Yeah.
So it's kind of probably happening globally.
Yeah, and this is the same conversation that has happened every year for like the last 7 years that I've been in Roblox. I think it's just more external people talking about it this year because of how strong Roblox was last year. So I reckon they'll probably have the similar sort of growth as what they've had. They're just not going to hit these insane CCU peaks that they hit last year. They might do, like, I don't know, maybe Jandel comes out with a game that none of us know about right now, but the chances of another one of those, another Grow a Garden or another Steal a Brain Rot, slim.
Yeah. Xandros.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on one thing and I think it's important that we mention, is just the parental control increase that this will give. I mean, I know we've touched on it before, and there's definitely issues that Roblox needs to figure out for developers and how to reach intended audiences. But I think parental controls and what they're giving back to the parents is important. So Roblox, in their announcement they made, said if parents only have time to do one thing, they should set up a linked parent account. And then from that, they should explore parental controls. And then third, they should play a game with their kids. Meaning that you can, for let's say chat, and for a kid's account, you can't chat at all, but parents can extend that a little bit. So if you have friends on Roblox, you can maybe give them permission to chat with their friends. You can control their maturity ranking. Do you want minimal, mild, moderate? What are you okay with your children seeing? And then even more specifically, I can outright block games. So even if Roblox deems this game is appropriate for, a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old, as a parent, I could say, oh, I don't think it is. And I don't want my kids seeing that, and I can just block it. And it's very easy and accessible now for parents. And we often talk about like the busy working parent who does not play Roblox, which most parents, I mean, maybe not most parents on this call, but most parents don't play Roblox. Don't understand how it works.
And Eliza's making Roblox games, so we're different. Mike, do you play?
Roblox?
Yeah.
No.
I guess
all my kids do.
Your kids are not into Roblox, right?
No, they all are.
Okay. I was thinking Fortnite more for Sam, but anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
I don't let Sam play Fortnite.
Okay.
So, I mean, the parental controls, I mean, really, I think, I ground it in like my aunt and uncle and my little cousin. Like, they don't understand Fortnite or Roblox. I mean, they get Fortnite a little more. But if they're able to just really have this direct control over what he's able to see, then it feels a lot easier, and it's not as much of an extreme of I'm just going to block it outright. So I think that's an important update and just worth noting so that any parents watching can understand that they have more control today than they did 3 days ago.
Yep, definitely. Okay, well, we are going to wrap there unless there's anything else. I wanted to end on a brand note because 88, our mantra at 88 is to integrate brands as playable into games. And we did that with OliPop into SpongeBob. I saw news this morning that Oreo left Omnicom and is going to 72 and Sunny. So any of these kind of cutting edge creative agencies, we want to be friends. So 72 and Global, expect a call from us, because we were thinking, wouldn't it be cool if we had Oreo also? And what we mean by playable is, Oreo, for example, is a cookie. It could also be unit food in the SpongeBob Tower Defense game to power up players. And so anyway, I was excited to see that. We've got I think 4 events coming up, 4 gatherings in different cities, LA, New York, London. We get to hang out with James both in New York and London, which is exciting. So brands, if you're interested, definitely reach out and join us for the discussion. So with that, I will say one last thing, which is the disclaimer. This is not investment advice. This is not meant, we are not giving any kind of a message around buying, selling, or holding any securities. We may or may not hold the companies that we've mentioned today as investments. And with that, have a great long weekend if you're in the US, and see you later. Bye.